Now I'd like to introduce the next panel, Winning the Future, Countries and Businesses. And I'd like to give the floor to the moderator, Ivana Stankovic. She's the strategic advisor at FITR.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivana, and I'm happy to have the pleasure to be moderating a panel with, I would say, quite remarkable and people with exceptional experience, and on such an interesting topic as winning the future. I think most of the people in the audience today have heard quite a lot about the challenges, and I'm happy to be switching the conversation more into a different direction in terms of what we're doing and what we can do to ensure that we have a sustainable future. So with me today, I would like to introduce first to give the floor to the lady on the panel. She should be joining us through an online connection. I hope that she's here. So I would like to introduce Isabella Wang. She's a social entrepreneur. She's the COO of Creative House. It's a marketing agency. She's a speaker and an author. She has written The Digital Mind of Tomorrow and The Digital Transformation. So she's not here? Okay, so, and once she comes online.
Sitting next to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, she should be sitting here next to
AI.
Yeah.
Okay, then
She's in the metaverse.
Yeah, she's in the metaverse, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then if we don't have Isabella, then I can introduce Vili Korpela. He's a professional futurist and an impact strategist, a fellow at the Dubai Future Academy. He's had experience in impact investing, sustainable investing with several investment funds and initiatives in both Europe, the Middle East, Africa as well. You're currently working on your PhD research titled Sustainable Investing as the New Mainstream for Long-Term Value Creation for Institutional Investors at the Finland Futures Research Center. So it wouldn't take a genius to sort of get a grasp of where your focus lies. I can see that this can be framed in a way as responsible investing, and I also managed to see a panel of yours where you were discussing on the investing money with a purpose. So how did this come about? I know that maybe you can also tell us something more personal so that we can bring, I know a few things, but I'll give you the floor so that you can say a few things and tell us how did you get into this field of impact and sustainable financing.
The first question will be how many hours do we have? But I want to thank everybody, all the organizers, and especially Galena, because Galena has been very helpful in making all the logistics work. So it's a tremendous work that you all do here at the Macedonia 2025, and I really feel very humbled by the level of conversation and the enthusiasm that you have here. So I guess to your point about where my focus lies, I think it's really about how can we build the future together. A lot of times we still, and you mentioned the word responsibility, and responsibility is a very important word for me. You know, I think that's where it all starts. But it lies within the responsibility of each of us as individuals. You know, we very often say that, you know, it is the responsibility of the government to do this, or it is the responsibility of the state or the region. Mm-hmm. But that means that we assign, in many ways, our responsibility to these institutions, not realizing that they are just collectives that consist of individuals.
Such as us. Which is sort of, in a way, absolving ourselves from the immediate responsibility and giving this role to someone else.
Yes, and the same thing happens when we discuss about technology. So very often, you know, we are not fully aware of what those technologies, such as the blockchain, AI, machine learning, metaverse, what these concepts are, and we feel that they're happening to us, instead of that we
In
don't actually
cooperation.
realize that we are the ones who are creating the future. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
People ask a futurist like myself that, what will be the future? We don't know because it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, when I was thinking about giving an introduction, how can you give an introduction about something that is yet to happen?
Exactly.
But it's for me it was exciting that you are a professional futurist. We don't have many of those here in the region, so that you're sort of your day-to-day operation tasks are focused around imagining a future.
Yes, it's very
Or a
much about
potential.
imagination, but it's also about daring. It's about daring to ask certain questions that otherwise we wouldn't. We are very stuck usually with something that we call the path dependency, which means that, we think that the future will be somehow a continuation of what has been. But if we look, for example, at the evolution of Dubai in the last 50 years, from basically a city that had that had one airport, one tiny airport, didn't have an airline on its own, didn't have any universities, and the way how they have now become one of the global hubs for emerging technologies and really a destination of choice for many businesses and innovation experts to be located in Dubai, that all starts with the mindset. So at the end of the day, what is really, how do we create the future, or how do we win? We can only win by having the right mindset. We need to be helping the other person to grow. The ruler of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, he has said famously that a great leader is the one who grows great leaders. So very often we still, especially I've been also looking at the region for about 7 years. I arrived for the first time in 2014, and I've also worked in Albania, Kosovo, here in North Macedonia and Serbia and Montenegro, looking both as an advisor to the private sector but also to the governments. And very often what we see is that people are so focused on their own doing that they actually forget that in order for us to grow, you actually need to collaborate. And that's the mentality I want to take to investment funds. A lot of times investment funds, they still look at who will be the winner, but not looking at how do we build synergies between those entities. Nobody's looking at portfolios still as of today as a synergic system where basically all those entities that you invest in, they should start helping each other to grow by transferring and sharing knowledge and ideas, because ultimately, if I don't help you to win, then I'm not winning. Africans have this term called Ubuntu, and Ubuntu loosely translates into English that I am because we are. It means that I get my fulfillment, I get to win only if I help you. If I don't help you to grow and to win, I'm not winning. I might have the illusion or a temporary moment that I would feel that I'm winning, but the truth is that I have to be helping you to grow if I am to lift myself up.
Yes, this is especially, I would say, not so characteristic for the finance industry, especially for the stock exchange, because this is more or less a zero-sum game. Somebody has to lose for somebody else to win.
Exactly, but it's that, because I was thinking today before I came here,
Yeah.
because I was preparing for this panel, and I was thinking about the concept of winning, and very often that's the mindset, and that's why my first intuition was to fight against the concept of winning, because I also had the same idea as you, that if I win, somebody must lose. So why would somebody have to lose? But then I was thinking, let's think of a running game. 2 persons, 3 persons, all running 100 meters, or 10 kilometers, whatever length. No matter who wins, since the others know that there's very competent people running against him or her, they will prepare as best as they can. So for sure, even the person who didn't get to be number one in that one game got much better from the fact that she or he was preparing for that run.
And
So the
running-
actual losing is not the participation in the game, but it's not to participate in the game.
Yes.
So that's my message to everyone here. It's like participating in the game. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose in one game. But the
you
idea
always
of
learn.
winning is that you grow.
Yeah.
You have to fail. You know, it's the hero's journey. Nobody's born a hero. You have to go through a number of challenges and obstacles, and you need to fall many times. But you just have to be in the game, not to step out of it, because that's when you lose. You don't lose by being in the game. You lose by not being in the game.
It's it's an interesting, I think I would agree, it's an interesting concept. Maybe I haven't thought of it that way. You mentioned the mindset, and I believe when I was trying to get to know your background of the panelists, because before today we haven't met,
Yeah.
that I saw this curiosity underlying everything, and I think that this is also characteristic as well for our next panelist, Costa Petrov. He's, I think, quite well known on our local market, an international entrepreneur, the co-founder or founder of P-World, best-selling author, and last but not least, he is the current director of Fund for Innovation and Technology Development. You've had, yes, you've also had an interesting journey, I would say, from moving from the private sector to the public sector, with a bit of entering the political scene at first, and then arriving at a position in the government. So I would say I definitely see the curiosity and the learning-driven part, but also the impact or the purpose. So what was the switch, or what prompted you entering the public sector?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I think one thing you missed about him that I found the most amusing is how you started learning Japanese.
Yeah.
So we can discuss that
Yeah.
during the break. Yeah, thank you, Ivana, for the question. I think it's a very important question because, first of all, my belief is that whatever you learn, you should share with others. And because at the end of the day, our mission is to share lessons learned. And right now, we are living in a very interesting, I think, era in modern Macedonian history, where we have to decide what's going to be our story. You know, I think for 30 years we've been struggling to create some kind of story. What are we? I'm not talking now about name or, you know, nationality or those kind of things, but what is going to be the story of the country? And I've always believed that it's the young people, the entrepreneurs, the risk takers, that they can create a real story about our country. However, we have to, if you are a futurist in Macedonia, I think there are a lot of fatalists. So we always look at the darkest scenario, the most negative scenario. However, what we've seen lately with people like Gorian, I would include myself, Nino is here. We have like this huge wave of entrepreneurs who are successful and who are sharing the stories.
And enthusiastic.
And enthusiastic, because I think if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, in your darkest period, you have to be the most enthusiastic. But I think what is really important for all of us to do is, you know, we are attaching so much energy to the negative stuff, but we are missing the positive stuff. And I quite often share this. We're always talking about young people leaving Macedonia. And yes, young people are leaving Macedonia, and this is a global problem, especially now in the era of digital nomads and everything. And it's important to go out and learn new things and explore new cultures and new countries. But let's also talk about the successful people in Macedonia. Let's talk about the people that without any political help, just with the little money they had and like the enthusiasm and their friends around them, they created, you know, a startup that in a couple of years can grow in a unicorn. And even if it doesn't grow in a unicorn, even if they fail, at least they've tried to do this. And what is really interesting is that I think we have to reprogram ourselves to think that someone else's success is also my success. I think for a really long time, you know, we have this proverb in Macedonia, I hope the neighbor's sheep will die, but also the neighbor, you know, like, but we have to live from this mentality and to, you know, to celebrate these amazing stories, to celebrate the people, and to include those that have left, you know, the country for one or another reason. I know now we are working on the national strategy for artificial intelligence, and we included so many successful Macedonians that work for major brands, for universities, and having that first call with them on Zoom, it was amazing, because, you know, at the end of the day, everyone wants to contribute towards the good of their country. So you have to create this platform, and I think what is really important, I don't want to get too political, is you cannot create a change in the system from behind your screen in your pajamas at home with a Facebook status. I mean, me entering this experience on one side has been the most traumatic experience, because entering politics in Macedonia, you know, they put you in this, you know, roller coaster where you start doubting yourself, where you start believing the haters. But at the end of the day, if more people like me, like Gorian, like, you know, Nino, you can start a political career too one day. But if this kind of people enter the political scene, that's going to be a game change. Because let's face it, we have smart people, we have good people. There is no reason why we shouldn't be, you know, the best country in the region, because we have that. However, and this is my message to all the innovators, to all the entrepreneurs, to all the, you know, futurists in the country, get, you know, sometimes the comfort zone, the microcosmos is fine, but if you want to create a real change, you have to get, you know, in the gladiator scene. Unfortunately, Macedonia is still politics. Hopefully, you know, in 10, 20 years, you can create that positive change also from the private sector. But we need smart people, we need innovative people, because that's the only way to change the game and to really create this story where we're going to talk about innovation. When we mention Macedonia, we will think of innovation and technology. We will not think of, you know, Yugoslavia or conflicts or, you know, Balkans or whatever. And lastly, I think as a country, we have to move out from this mentality that we're not good enough. I think sometimes we have this orphan mentality where, you know, and part of it is our fault, but also I think sometimes the international community sees us like that. Oh, we need to save them, we need to protect them. No, we should be partners in this, you know? And now, I mean, we are going through this every day. When we ask them for help for national AI strategy, they're like, you need funding for national AI strategy? We're like, yeah, you know, we actually want to position ourselves as AI destination. So this is the conversation that we have. And I think we have the quality, we have the people, and this is the best time. I think COVID-19 has given us opportunity to create this different perspective about the country. And I think we're on the right path, but we need more, you know, braver people to enter the, you know, the main scene.
Yeah, I think it also happened for me pretty much the same when I entered the startup ecosystem like 2015, that my mindset completely changed, because these were people that were optimistic and enthusiastic about the future and were not afraid to create a different future from what we were experiencing. So getting out of this, I don't know, you mentioned an apathy, maybe it's too strong, but this creating a sense of agency that you can be the creator of this change. And that if you think about it, with all of us having this similar mindset and approach, then we can create the change.
Well, you are an agent in any case.
Yes,
but
but
it's
you
just
can
an
be-
agent for what?
Yes, exactly.
And that's really the question, you know, and that's what I say to every investment fund. Every investment fund has a massive impact on their local economies by the decisions they make on how they allocate their capital. However, do they care?
Yes.
Like, if you do care, well, why don't you state what your intention is? Why don't we have a discussion together with all the financial sector investors, both private, you know, and governmental, on what kind of society do we actually want to create? Because ultimately those choices are creating the society even more than policy planning sometimes. You know,
But-
most of the time it's more.
Yeah, but is it the society that we want, or we don't have an idea of what kind of society we are creating.
I think
get
we
back
all-
to that. I know that we have Isabella now joining us with us online. Thank you for waiting for a few minutes. I did a bit of an introduction, so I will just maybe repeat a few things about your background that I think we're pretty much all of us on the same page in terms of background and experience and taking responsibility. So you yourself are a social entrepreneur, you're working or you're the CEO of a marketing agency. You're also an active speaker and an author of The Digital Mind of Tomorrow. I haven't managed to read the entire book, but I read a few chapters and I watched a few videos. So for me, like what sort of stood out the most was this, your approach when it comes to doing business. You're digital first, and then you're helping businesses become digital themselves, whether through digital strategy, web solutions, and similar services. But when it comes to you personally using technology in your everyday life, there's a bit of skepticism there. So maybe you can fill us in where this comes from and why do you feel that way?
Wow, good speech, good opening, Ivana. Thank you. You almost said everything I was going to say. Well, look at this. I've never done this hybrid way. It's great. Like I can see myself on the stage, on the background. And thank you everyone for being here. Whoever left over here, thank you for your support for digital transformation. You're here witnessing some historical moment. And as Ivana introduced, I'm an entrepreneur, business leader, speaker, and writer. I have a book coming out called The Digital Mind of Tomorrow. I'm very passionate to talk about things about digital transformation because there's no doubt, with or without realization, we are living and breathing in this digital world. And I'm eager to find out what can accelerated technology take us and how these modern technologies has reshaped our society, our businesses, and our human behaviors. So what does digital transformation actually mean for businesses and for individual and for our humanity in general? So all of these is what I've been really dig into and pouring my heart and soul into. So it's wonderful to have this opportunity here today to share some of my thoughts and insights. And thank you all again for being here. And thank you, Macedonia 2025 Summit, for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I think we started a bit talking about the right mindset, the right approach. There's also asking the right questions. And I know that you've tried a different approach to finance. And is this where you see the future of finance going? Like impact investing and sustainable investing sort of becoming the norm instead of the exception? Because we still don't have a lot of this type of funds in Europe or all over the world.
I don't think it's so much that finance has changed or that there is anything internally within finance that is driving the change.
No.
I think it is us as people who are driving the change. You know, we are becoming more awakened to the world because there is simply more information available on products and how value chains function. So we demand more from the companies who deliver and create products and services to us, you know, and that we are the change that will ultimately affect and transform also finance.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, it is like Alvin Toffler, who was one of the very famous futurists in 1970s and 80s, he was always saying that once we go from one wave of development to the other, the actual conflict no longer is between nations, but it's between ideas. So basically the old paradigm, when it's still there, but there's already a new coming, so the war that happens is between these two paradigms, you know, and I feel that that's where finance is at the moment. You know, it's like there is still a lot of this looking at benchmarks, you know, looking at only making profit.
Yes.
But the reality on the ground is, like we were saying in the opening, when Mike was talking and doing the interview, whenever we invest, fact is that never ever has in the history of investment, ever any investment has been done purely based on numbers. You always look at the person.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the
Story.
day, you know that the business plan will change because the market will change, you know, and whenever that product is ready, the market has already shifted. So you always have to pivot, and we all know this. But however, the models we used in finance today are still only looking at this number game. You know, and we make all kinds of future projections thinking that the tomorrow will be the same as today. Maybe a bit improved, but now we see from the pandemic and we see from a lot of these what we call X events, you know, things which we just cannot control. The world has become so interconnected that there's a lot of uncertainty. So instead of like projecting based on what has happened before, we actually have to use imagination. And we need to communicate. So I need to be talking to you and explaining what is it that I want to do, because most likely this will be the case. Most likely you will not be working your whole life only with Macedonians who have been going to same schools, you know, as you have. So you don't come always from the backgrounds. This is the future. You know, we will be working with people with very different mindsets and different value systems. So if I don't explain where I come from, you would never understand, and we would be conflicting all the time. So we have to start explaining the way how we think, and that will enable us to work together and gain a much better understanding than assuming.
You're touching on a very interesting point. It's that basically it's demand-driven, the change, and that every individual participating today in this digital world, I think that Isabella can also chime in on this one, is that all of us, whether we're aware of it or not, we are being, we're participating in this technological world. And you mentioned on one end ideas, but also the role of the technology and the ones who are collecting the data. So it's, I would say that a lot of it, or a lot of the emphasis goes on the personal responsibility of the individual that is participating in the system, and what we demand from the organizations and the institutions that are either creating the technology, developing, or driving it in directions. I know, Isabella, you've been active in raising this awareness for people. Because every time you get online, you are a data point and somebody's collecting this data. And there are a few technological giants that are more or less dictating or the authority when it comes to our role in the digital world of tomorrow. So can you tell us a bit more where this is coming from and what you are personally doing on this subject?
You're on mute.
Yes.
The most overused phrase in the past years.
It's
You're
so
on mute.
2020.
You're so 2020, Isabella.
You're mute. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, well, first of all, I was saying I very agree with Will. Did I say your name right? Will mentioned it. 100% agree with you. Tremendous mindset. So when I talk about digital transformation, I'm starting to remove the word digital. To me, this is not a digital transformation. It's a transformation for human beings. It's a very fundamental period. And as well was mentioned, we're at this critical turning point. So what we're going through right now, what I see is we're going through a transformational process that is heavily empowered by digital tools, digital technologies. And I see the stage we're currently in. It's a historical moment. It's a turning point of human civilization. And the impact is deep and fundamental. So we can't just look at this from one part or one specific area. It needs to be on a very holistic approach. on the surface, it's our behavior shift, right? Whether with yourself, with customers, with employees. But on the deeper level, it's reshaping our mindset. And in another word, you can call it our culture. And that's something takes decades, no, hundreds of years used to be. But now, look at the pandemic. We switch almost overnight. This never ever happened in our human history. And it refers to more on the way we live, right? How we run the society. Just to give you an example, for the first time ever during the past 5,000 years, the economic system, whatever you call it, the formation of economics has never been able to form without governance. And now this is changing. It's changing because there's this technology coming up called blockchain. It's empower it to form its own economic system without governance. And that has a lot of things to entail to it. I don't want to elaborate here to freak everyone out and to be on the wrong page. But I'm just sharing this message out for people to aware what kind of transformation we're dealing with. It's not just about technology. It's way, way, way deeper on that. And of course, on top of it, the pandemic, the crisis, always it's a trigger to accelerate, right? To amplify the power of the transformation. And some audience were joking with me about the metaverse or something. And now this whole physical virtual world, the combination of the physical and virtual world is expanding exponentially. Companies like those digital giants, they're betting trillions of dollars, betting their collective future on this whole digital empire, whatever you call it. And we're facing this all changed, and it forced us to reorganize the way we're living, the world economy, how it operates, how the social society, the structure should be look like. And to the fundamental level, it's how the money is used for its operation. And the recent news that came out, every of you probably heard of, it's the NFT, the metaverse. What NFT does is to fundamentally change the operation way of the exchange value. In another word, the money, the ownership, how you define that, it's changed. We might don't need the money anymore. So with all of these things, we really have to think from a larger and deeper perspective. All of you here are leaders. So you are the one gonna moving the needle. You're the one gonna lead your people. And how you make your decision is gonna be very, very, very critical.
Yes,
I love
agree.
the words, we
Yeah.
are the ones we have been waiting for. And I think that's really what it is. It's like, we shouldn't wait for that change to come. It's already here. And I fully agree with what you said, Isabella. Like, if we look at video games, and everything that happens within the virtual worlds and, the emerging metaverse, that is basically those functions that already take place. Those type of exchanges are the ones that will be reflected in our physical worlds. And I think, another thing that you touched upon, that I really agree is that, what really the pandemic and the whole Zoom life, it created, it was a huge democratizer. It was a huge democratizer in the sense that we were all in the same mess, no matter what your organizational hierarchy in the world was. So all of a sudden, everybody was accessible, from presidents to cabinet members to CEOs to any experts, So basically anybody in this world during the pandemic, when the whole world was closed, was approachable. And this never used to happen because you would have to talk to the assistant, you would have to make all these bookings, and all of a sudden you could have direct access to all the decision makers as long as you had something to say that was of value to that person. So I think that's really what's changing. So we will always have hierarchies, but these will be competence-based hierarchies. So it doesn't mean that everybody is equal, because you have to have certain competence in order to be relevant to some stakeholders. But if you have that relevancy, then this is basically how we're going to function. It will not be set by organizations that now you will be here and you will be here under. No, it will be based on what can you do. And that again comes back to the responsibility. It's really wherever you are within your organization, yes, it is absolutely up to you, up to me, to contribute to the well-being and the winning of the organization. And it is critical. No matter if I'm the intern in a large multinational corporation If I don't take the responsibility, if I don't give all of me, that will be critical to the success of that organization because everything is interconnected.
So I guess the question here is this becoming a norm or the everyday life, or are we still talking about this being an exception? Because at least for our region here, maybe I can talk from a more local perspective, I would say that we're still used to giving up our power. In a sense, somebody else makes the decisions and somebody else is responsible, but we're not taking responsibility ourselves.
Collective responsibility.
Yes, so this is the first, but it's scary on one end, but on the other end, it's very empowering because you are becoming, as you mentioned, you are becoming the change you want to see, and you are contributing to this worldview that you want to see materialize at some point. So is it, if we can, I don't know, with local perspectives, but also on a more global scale, do you think that businesses and especially countries and governments, are we doing enough to...
That's the point. It should never become the norm. If it becomes the norm, then somebody is imposing a value on you without you making that choice for yourself.
Okay.
So that means you're already in a position of disempowerment. So true empowerment only becomes when you take the responsibility. So I also feel that, this whole discussion and these two words, it really it triggered me, when you say collective responsibility, because in a way that collective responsibility, it can only become if both me and you, we are individually responsible, and then we choose to collaborate from this position of empowerment that I am an agent and you are an agent, let's work together. If somebody else comes and say that we all here need to assume collective responsibility, then
There's
where is
no
our
responsibility.
choice?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Where is the actual responsibility? It's somewhere in the air.
Yes.
But it's also having that kind of system. Sometimes I joke that some people in our country, they want the system, but the system to be for someone else, not for them. I want a system, but I want to have like a back door through the system. But I would, for example, connected to the work that we do at the Fund for Innovation and the responsibility we have as a government agency, is that it's all about collective responsibility. Because right now, for example, we are financing 70% of the startups in Macedonia, which is great for us, but depressing for the private sector because the private sector, it's not present in this ecosystem. So, and if you want to see this fast change, and it has to be a fast change, I think what COVID-19 has taught us is that we're all on the same train. It just depends whether your train stops at every station or you're in the bullet train. So we all have to work together and we have to work fast. But we also have to understand that, that change that we want will not happen if we are all not involved in it in a certain way. So that's why we are talking now with banks, with private companies. We've created an investment fund for the first time in the country to invest in startups. But you cannot create this change if the government is here, the private sector is here, educational system is here. And I think that's going to be the biggest shock that's going to happen in our country, is that we have to do these changes really fast. And this change may be very uncomfortable for a lot of people, but it needs to be done. And again, but it's very much to connect it. We all have to be, and this is the most, after you're on mute, we're all in this together. It's probably the most cliche saying of 2020. But I think positive result, I agree with you. My individual responsibility, but then how that affects the collective responsibility. Because if we all want to create a different image of our country, a modern, technology, innovation-driven, we all have to be in this together. And it's for me, sometimes it's very frustrating when people say, you're talking about artificial intelligence, but people don't have toilets in some villages. Having sewage and artificial, it doesn't exclude one from another, I think we have to do this process parallel, and for some people, this process is maybe science fiction, but that's fine. For others, it's reality. For some, it's the future. But I think we have to work collectively, parallelly, but all with the same vision that we all want to create a better country, because we will not wake up one day and say, wow, wow, look what we've done. We have to work on it together, and it will be painful. But at the end of the day, once we develop that collective mentality, we'll understand why we are where we are now, but also where can we be. I'm not talking about 10 years, in 6 months or 12 months.
So something just to comment on that, we approached this innovation ecosystem from Dubai by looking at what role the government can play there, and we also set up the Dubai Future District Fund.
We are following.
Which was launched last week officially. And basically what the idea is that we wouldn't invest purely on startups, but we would also invest in the ecosystem players and find those gaps where the private sector players and investment funds are not active, and basically bridging that gap. Because one of the biggest problems, I also work a lot with development finance institutions in Africa and in Asia, and the big problem that all of these development finance institutions say that yes, it's great that we're allocating and giving money to the local players to grow their businesses, but what usually happens is that we are the sole givers of capital to those companies. So we don't actually, and they learn the language that we use. Those companies who learn to speak the development language get the funds, so we are actually distorting the economic development
I agree with you 100%.
in those countries.
Yeah.
So that's why the balanced approach is usually, it's not perfect. Nothing in this life is perfect. But if you balance it by taking multiple different approaches as a government and understanding that the role of the government ultimately is as the enabler and as the ecosystem builder and not as a player.
Yeah.
Exactly. Creating the
I mean, that's our end goal. Right now, we are the player, but we want to become, and I mean, it's going to happen, but I agree 100% with what you said. And I mean, lastly, what is really important, this is my message to all the international organizations that are investing in the ecosystem, is, try to understand what's happening locally. Try to understand sit down with government agents, sit down with local players, because sometimes I feel that we're doing a lot of parallel processes. 5 government organizations and 5 international donors are doing the same thing at the same time, but no one knows what it's doing. So I think what is really important that we have to understand we are on this table together. We sit on the same table. And together we can really create this amazing
And getting
change.
also the technologies to work
I
together.
think Isabella is going to be so upset with it. We'll go for a coffee afterwards.
Yeah, and I think Isabella, but Isabella, I think you can comment on, because I think one of the things I wanted to actually ask your opinion is, because I also feel that this silo mentality, it also exists within the digital field. Like a lot of people take the digital to be something different from the physical, and also people take artificial intelligence to be something different from blockchain.
Yeah.
So many people, like they are really siloed even within these future technologies. So how do you think we could actually get everybody to talk together?
So sounds like we're here talking about a communication issue.
Oh.
Time, so please, if you can
Yes.
get to the end of this.
Please, Isabella, can you be faster? We're running out of
Otherwise,
time.
we enjoy the discussion. Thank you. It's very lively.
45 seconds, Isabella, go.
Not my fault, it's your fault. Only too proud of someone. Yeah, well, it sounds like we're here talking about communication issue, right? Did I understand right?
Yes, I guess communication and willingness to understand.
No, it was
or-
really how to move away from the silo, how to understand, to make people understand that AI is not different from blockchain, that everything is related, so that there is no AI expertise outside of understanding what's happening within the blockchain, for example. So,
Yes, I got it now. Fine, kind of say this in a very straightforward way, so people can understand the knowledge, to understand what's really going on, instead of thinking this is something high technology, I can't even understand it, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so that's why, did I pass 45 seconds or something? So that's why I'm getting the point. So that's why I'm really passionate about talking this topic, because that's, I think 90% of the mentality of people are thinking like this is something else, but in reality we are living with it and we have to deal with it like how we deal with our smartphone right now. I always use this metaphor is if you have a hard time understanding what period we're going through right now with this transformation, AI, whatever, just think about how internet was 20 years ago, early 2000, late 1990s, like how you perceive internet back then, and look how internet reflect now in our life. This is a very straightforward example to show people. I think the key is our understanding, the mentality, the mindset. It's not about the technology itself. We need to find different way to talk to people. What are the actual thing we're going through, not the technology power, how it bring us closer or actually separate us more. It's what we're really going through on a culture level, because that's what connecting people, connect us with, no matter where you're from. We're sold by a story, by government or by company, whatever. We need to come up with a story to make people understand, and that's the first step for people to start acknowledging this thing, and then it's the next step to really understand how to use it. I think that's what I'm really talking about most of the time in my book, in my speaking, and today also with you guys. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you very much. I know that I think we're going to continue the discussion afterwards. I apologize for taking a little bit more of your time. Thank you, Isabella. Thank you, Vili, and thank you, Costa.
Thank you.
I think that we can
And thank
wrap
you,
this up
Macedonia
here.
2025.
Thank you very much.